It's a Tuesday, the day after the Philadelphia 76ers got their doors blown off by the Chicago Bulls. The 23-win Chicago Bulls after last night's defeat, 142-110. It wasn't good at all. Folks, just remember, they were down by 50 at
to the Bulls.
To the Bulls. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHLY365 when you sign up. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Look who I have hanging out with me in here, folks. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck. I'm Devon Givens. Bree is with us. All of you showing up here in the chat to vent and get off your chest how things have been for this basketball team. Losers now of 8 in a row for this group.
Is that good?
Some think it is good. Some. But maybe not for the guy that we're about to talk about to start this thing off here today as we discuss. We've talked so much about the players. We've talked about the front office. We've even talked about the coach. And on January 22nd, a month ago, folks, we did a show after the Denver Nuggets. Was it 35 that game? The Nuggets beat the Sixers by 35, I believe it was, in that game on the 21st of January. We followed that Tuesday night blowout with a Wednesday show discussing if Nick Nurse was on the hot seat. He then did a pretty good job coaching his group where they won 4 games in a row, which was a season high. Now we are a month later from that time where they have lost 8 games in a row. They are now on a season high and season long losing streak of 8 games in a row with New York in New York on Wednesday, home for the Golden State Warriors on Saturday, an 8:30 matinee game from South Philadelphia. That could be 10 losses in a row for the Philadelphia 76ers.
And then the Red Hot Blazers come to town.
And then the Red Hot Blazers and a slew of other teams that do not look good opposite the 76ers. So, Derek, as we start this one off, a month later with Nick Nurse, the question that we simply lay out here is, number one, how much of this is he to blame for? But with it, especially after that performance last night, is his time with the 76ers nearing an end?
Yeah, I mean, look, I certainly think when you talk about the job that Nick Nurse has done, you can go through a lot of stuff earlier on in the season that we disagreed with pretty strongly, that probably cost them a lot of close games, and they could be in a much better position if he had done a better job. You can look at some of the decisions he'd made recently, and the one I'm going to go to for pretty much the entirety of my life was going zone against the Boston Celtics, was going to a David Roddy and Andre Drummond front court against the Boston Celtics, the team that hunts threes more than any team in the history of the league.
Doing so in the first half, by the way, the David Roddy, Andre Drummond. That wasn't like, hey, we're panicking and we got to throw something at the wall.
That was the game
this
plan.
Is my choice.
Yes. So like those two against the most 3-point happy team literally in the history of our sport were perplexing decisions and something like they were signs of a coach that has run out of ideas and is desperate. But the biggest reason if he doesn't make it through this season is because you look at the competitive response of this team, to lose to Toronto and Brooklyn before the break, after having just lost to the Cade Cunningham-less Pistons, the Bucks without Giannis, like we can go through all the teams, and to come out after all of that with these games. All right, look, the Celtics, great team, tough matchup, especially for a hindered Joel Embiid. But to lose to the Nets and the Bulls in the fashion that you did, the Bulls coming off their own 6-game losing streak, the Bulls playing without Nick Vucevic, the Bulls with the 5th worst offense in the league.
The Bulls who lost Lonzo Ball at halftime. He didn't play the whole second half.
5th worst offense in the league since the Zach LaVine trade. To give up 142 points to that squad and have your players come out and make the comments they did about not having the right habits and the right... Look, at some point, you lose a team. Whether it's your fault or it's not your fault, it's hard to come back from that. And certainly his players have not shown the kind of competitive fight that would be necessary to turn this around and really instill any confidence in the coach for next season.
So I'll start here. I certainly have sympathy for the position that Nick Nurse is in, right? Like, I don't know that there's a coach other than maybe 3 to 5 guys around the league that would step it. If you would just put them in Nick Nurse's spot at the start of this year, they'd be better perhaps, but they wouldn't be meaningfully better, right? Like maybe they're in that 10th play-in spot and maybe they're hanging around with a few more wins on the resume. I don't think that necessarily is the difference between where they're at and being like a real deal playoff team, a 6 seed or above, like trying to actually compete.
Red
for something.
Auerbach does not make this team a contender.
Yeah. So I want to start with that.
Even
and
if
like,
you squint.
This applies to all of us up here. We are not people who go around just willy-nilly calling for people's jobs. Like, in fact, I would say transparently, part of the reason that I still have good relationships with people who are around the league in coaching and executive capacities is like they know that we come from a fair place, right? Yeah. We criticize them for reasonable things, for things that I can tell you are within their control, but I don't blame them for quirks that come with the roster or injuries or whatnot. So I'll preface it by saying that.
Even Doc, who quite frankly was a little antagonistic at times, I never called for his job.
No.
And
so
go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Yeah. So I'm not like I'm rooting for people to lose their jobs. I don't want people to lose their jobs. In a best case scenario, Nick would have found some way to make this season interesting, to make this team competitive. The thing that I come back to is that, of course, this is the worst case scenario for a lot of different things this season, but they didn't have a plan for the worst case scenario, or even for like, they didn't have a plan B and a plan C, right? We've talked about this all year. Joel Embiid's health was obviously a big question mark coming into the year. You gave him the big extension. You felt good enough about that, but like you knew coming into the season, he was not going to play back-to-backs. That was an organizational plan. He was going to get time off. And you were going to have to design a winning team, a winning program around what else was left, right? Paul George, although he's had different injuries and has missed a decent amount of time, he's played enough of the season and has played enough of the season with Maxey, with their other guys that you would say these two should be able to have, like, this is a Tyrese and Paul game. We have a plan. We have offensive structure. We have a defensive plan in order to get the best out of this group. And there's just been nothing, right? Like there have been some flashes of it at times where we saw some offensive improvement, and we certainly saw them compete on the defensive end earlier in the season. But the deeper we get, the more it has been revealed, there was never a plan in place to try to win without Joel. And so like we can all sit here and say, having Joel Embiid as your main star is tougher than it would be to have a Jokic, like a guy who's available all the time and at that top level, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, guy who's playing every game, plays both ends of the floor. Like you can go down the list of the high-end stars, the top 5, top 10 players. Joel is the hardest to have to plan for because part of the plan is without him. But you can't have this job and take this job and not be prepared for that. So that's number one. Number two is exactly what Derek's talking about, right? The problem now is that what we're seeing is not as simple as, oh, guys are hurt and like they're undermanned, but they're fighting, right? Like what we saw in January, end of January, before Joel comes back. Yeah, they lost to the Denver Nuggets, but that's a slugfest, right? You're getting into it with, well, at least the home game anyway. The away game is a different story. The home game against the Denver Nuggets, they battle. The first game against the Boston Celtics at home, they battle. They're competing right down to the very end. Frankly, they're winning most of that game. The Celtics catch the Holy Ghost from 3 and they pull ahead. Like, are those losses frustrating? Absolutely. But that shows a team that's still bought in, that still wants to do the right things, that still cares about being professionals. And it's important to note, Nick used that word last night, that we weren't professional or there was no professionalism shown by these guys last night. Well, that reflects on you as a coach, or at the very least, it reflects on what those guys are listening to from you and what they're willing to do to try to save you, right? Because most of these guys, quite frankly, have, at least the power players, Tyrese Maxey's here for a long time on that contract. Paul George here for a long time on that contract. Like some of these guys are sending a signal like, yeah, maybe I don't dislike you. And I'm not going to, Tyrese didn't call him out. Paul George didn't call him out. They're not using him as a fall guy, as we said in the thumbnail, but they're also not stepping up to the plate to try to help you and to save you and save this season. And when you get to a point where the roster is showing you, we don't care, that's a situation where I don't see how you can come back next year, no changes, because we can be honest. They can't trade Joel. They probably can't trade Paul without adding stuff you don't want to give up, as you're probably going into more of a retool rebuild over the medium term here. I just don't see how he can make it out of this situation. And it's not because I think he's a stupid guy or a bad coach or any of that. I just think there are some situations where you're just going to have to take the blame and eat the season that they're having. It sucks, but I think, frankly, Derek and I, as we were sitting there in the post-game presser last night, you could almost hear it that he knows where this is headed and like what the potential consequences of this season are.
Yeah. No, and I do want to be clear. Like, even here, I am not calling for him to be fired, in part because 2 reasons. First, I don't really think that's my job, and I've never really approached it like that. Like, I'm not like a ringleader trying to get everybody moving in that direction. I want to talk about what I see, what they can do better, what they're doing well, who I'm talking to in the locker room, things like that. That's how I view my job as a journalist. But also because I think, for the most part, coaching changes are overstated. I think they're the easiest lever to pull. I think because of that, it's easy to blame them. I think a lot of times people pretend that the core problems of a team will go away if you just bring in the right coach with the right scheme and the right mentality and all this stuff. I think for the most part, that's overly simplistic. But what I'm mostly reacting to is when you look at the reality of teams that play like this and aren't giving the kind of effort that they aren't giving, teams that have quit on their coach, and it's really hard to describe what's going on right now as anything but that, coaches just don't generally survive that. It's just the reality of the sport that we cover.
So to play off all of that, last night when we started talking about it after the post game, I made it very clear from the very start, as we talked about Nurse, that we weren't looking to fire Nick Nurse. We weren't asking Daryl Morey in the front office or even Josh Harris. It's just we know how the business works. You've been around long enough. You don't have to cover a team. You can just watch sports the way all of you do to know that this is how professional sports work. And when a team that was supposed to be, right now they are 20-37. A record is supposed to be flipped after 57 games at 37-20, and it's not. It's year 2 for Nurse. It's one thing, sometimes it can go the other way when you're a first-year coach, but this is a second-year coach that has yes, he's had injuries, and yes, he's had things that have worked against him. But when you look at a team after, as Kyle talked about, Derek started, but just looking at the Detroit, Milwaukee, right before the break, Toronto, Brooklyn, and then you lose to Boston, Brooklyn, and Chicago the way you did, and especially last night. I just want to bring it back that we didn't talk to Derek, we talked to Kyle after the Brooklyn game, but when Rich and I and Bree were watching the game and they were getting blown out again, that we were sitting there and saying, man, if this goes bad, he might be in trouble. And when we spoke to Kyle afterwards, they came back, they battled, they lose at the buzzer. All right, he saves his job. Then you follow up after that performance and you give up, after giving up 40 points in the first quarter to the Brooklyn Nets with no D'Angelo Russell, you got Trenton Wofford going off and all kinds of things that are happening. Joel, of course, not playing well. You follow that with a 39-point first quarter for the Chicago Bulls with no Vucevic and with Kobe White coming off the bench and Zach Collins getting into foul trouble, as you guys talked about. And at some point, just looking at the box score here, where they shot such a high percentage through the entire game, their assists were very high on made field goals. They were down by 21 at the break. Their biggest deficit was 21. Then they eventually got down by 50 points. So if you don't think that they have tuned out the coach in some way after having such a rough start to the second half of their season, and by the skin of their teeth back in it against the Brooklyn Nets on Saturday, and your response is to another team that's on a 6-game losing streak,
They stink.
that is really, really bad, that sits there, their best player right before the game, and you're down by 50, it's pro sports. Someone is going to get looked at. The trade deadline is over. You're not cutting Paul George. Daryl Morey is not getting fired right now in the moment. They're going to start to look at you. So that's where it comes to the feet of Nick Nurse and how that discussion goes. I mean, folks, again, they were down by 50.
I know.
And what your point was, they went on a what run to cut it to 32?
24-6.
They went
Cut
on
the
a
lead to
24-6 run to close out that game to avoid it being a 40-point loss or something as bad. We were
It's all
sitting,
window dressing
Yeah.
at that
it's all
point.
because we were sitting there and I said, I was like, Rich, they're gonna get like 130. He's like, no, they're gonna get 150.
They should have. They had 140 with like
They
6
missed a
minutes
bunch of
left.
layups. Yeah, they missed a bunch of layups. Chicago did. So bringing it all back home is just simply you were home on your home floor in front of your home fans, and you were down by 50.
It was wild.
50 damn
I was sitting
points
there-
to the Chicago Bulls.
I had so many moments where like, oh my God, they're down 10. Like, how much worse can this get? Like, this is the Bulls. They stink.
50.
Oh man, that blew up to 15. Oh, it's 20. And at one point, it's just like, well, it's over. They gave up.
So
They gave up.
what I keep coming back to in these recent games, right? Brooklyn's a bad team.
Bad.
Toronto's a bad team.
Yeah.
Chicago's a bad team. But there is an identifiable approach where you can say, okay, Brooklyn comes in and they have like half a guy who can dribble, right? So what do? They're moving guys off the ball. There's lots of cutting. There's pin downs being run. You're getting a guy in open corner three without being able. You don't have Tyrese Maxey. You don't have a guy who can drive and kick and hit the skip pass to the corner. You have Trendon Watford is using the slowest Euro step of all time to try to get by guys, but you're sharing the ball. You're moving the ball. And also you're attacking a zone defense that is conceding open three after open three after open three after open three. And that team plays with pop. They play with energy. And it doesn't have to be all Nick Nurse, right? Like I do think part of it's a quote unquote advantage for a team like Brooklyn or a team like Chicago. A lot of these teams have younger players that are just like, whatever, I'm going out to try to prove myself, right? Like I need to earn a role. I need to earn my future in the NBA. Where the Sixers right now have a pretty big handful of guys who are like, I'm an established player, right? Like I have a reputation.
They have a handful of guys who need contracts too.
They
Like
do.
Quentin Grimes needs a contract. Yabusele needs a contract. Even Kelly Oubre, who might opt out, he might need a contract.
Yeah.
You've got guys that you can push the right buttons for.
But I would say the quotes from Maxey and George, which we'll probably get to in a little bit, are all well and good. I don't see those guys pulling the sled either. I think this is a full roster give up at this point. There's nobody who I would point to and be like, that guy's unassailable. That guy's effort is there on every play and every night and who keeps coming. Like for Tyrese Maxey to have 10 shot attempts in 29 minutes last night is insane. And I know he had the hand issue. That just, you can't be that passive. And the only way to frame that, it used to be like, oh, they're loading up on Tyrese at the rim, right? And it's how the defense is playing him. He's not able to get there. Brother, they spent most of that game with nobody on the floor that was taller than like 6'7", the Bulls. You could get to the rim whenever you wanted. Their rim defense was so crappy. Paul George had success as a driver, which he hasn't had all year. And so you can see it in how they're running offense too, and how the urgency with which they're playing on that end of the floor. I know the defense has become the central point of discussion. It's where you see the effort problems and all that. But so I just look at these other teams that actually run things, right? That are getting into sets, and maybe it's because they're younger and they're more impressionable and they're more willing to listen to the Jordy Fernandezes or
The younger coaches.
the Billy Donovans, like the coaches there. Maybe that's why, because they just have a lot more young players, and it's not, Andre Drummond walking around like he's rooted to the ground and reaching in and not protecting the rim. But when you look at these other teams that they're losing to, they're teams that have the same excuses, right?
Yes.
The Chicago Bulls were down like 4 rotation guys after trading Zach LaVine and essentially saying our season is over, and those guys are competing. So there's you can't, I get it. It's hard to deal with the Joel Embiid absence. It's hard to deal with all the ups and downs and all the nonsense that they've dealt with. It's also hard for these other teams that have virtually the same record as the Sixers do, and they're coming in and wiping the damn floor with these guys.
The Nets started Killian Hayes,
who is like the ultimate tank commander.
Yes. Who signed like a week ago or
no, he was
within
on,
that
he was
week.
on day 3
Yeah.
of his 10-day. Yeah, he was on day 3 of his 10-day. And one point before we go to break, which was when you talk about the effort and all that stuff, and we always praise Ricky. I'm not even talking about the WTF moment. I'm talking about this play. I didn't bring this play up. When Dalen Terry snatched the ball out of his hands off that rebound and went up for a dunk right there on Ricky, it was like, yeah, this is where they are. This is how bad it is. Ricky got the rebound, turned around. Dalen Terry, not known for his brute strength, snatched it right out of his hand, turned around, vertical, 2-hand flush, just like that. And it was like, all right, this is that type of game for this type of team. So
you make Dalen Terry look competent. You're really having a tough one.
Tough night. 50 points. They were down last night. We'll come back. We'll talk about more because I wanted to follow up with something Kyle said, get to the Maxey and the George piece of it as well, and where the 76ers sit after a 32-point blowout loss where they trailed. I'm going to keep stamping this. They were down 50, man. 50 to the Chicago Bulls. We'll come back. We'll talk about it more right here on the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. And I'll keep that Bet365 theme going right now because being presented by Bet365 right here on this show, I have to tell you that over 90 million users worldwide use the app, and it's fantastic with the live in-game betting, the early payout offers for the NHL and the NBA as well. And today, Bet365 offers the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports. So with the NBA in particular tonight, you do have, yes, the NBA early payout offer, but you have NBA tip-off Tuesdays. It's another Bet365 NBA tip-off Tuesday. So place a qualifying parlay bet totaling $20 or more on tonight's NBA action and get up to $25 in bonus bets. Of course, terms and conditions do apply. So if you feel better about the slate of NBA games tonight, your team is not playing, you don't have to worry about sweating and biting your fingernails of if your star small forward.
I mean, it feels like bet against the Sixers right now is easy money.
That might be easy money. So if you want to do that tomorrow, you can do that. But tonight, you do, in fact, get a chance to take advantage of the Tip-Off Tuesdays $20 parlay bet and on tonight's game, and you get up to 25 in bonus bets as well at Bet365. And with the breaking news of Bet365, new customers can get $100 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use code PHLY365, deposit 10. Place a bet for $5, and you get $100 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on the spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 plus and physically located in Pennsylvania. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, guys, did all of that holiday shopping leave you with a credit card balance that's weighing you down? But what if you could pay it off faster and do so with zero interest until 2026? Because TrueMark Financial is offering zero interest on balance transfers for 12 months. So all your payments can go toward reducing your balance, not just covering interest. Transfer your existing balance from another institution to a TrueMark Financial Visa credit card and take advantage of this amazing offer. But hurry up legitimately because you have to apply by February 28th, 2025. That's later on this week. Whether you're interested in earning rewards, cash back, or simply prefer a low rate for everyday purchases with TrueMark Financial, you can choose a credit card that best fits your financial needs. Visit TrueMark.com/compare for full details and to apply today. TrueMark Financial, federally insured by the NCUA, equal opportunity lender. Terms and conditions apply. All loans are subject to approval. 3% balance transfer fees apply. Standard rates apply after the promotional rate.
Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Kyle, I wanted to follow up with something that you said about the rosters that the other guys have and how they play hard for their coaches. And the one thing that at least I'm guilty of, when they were getting ready to play these types of teams, we would look at them and talking about the play-in and giving themselves a chance to move ahead of them. It's almost impossible that it wouldn't happen. Just kept ignoring the fact that they are just as bad as those other teams.
Yeah.
Just flat out. They were just as bad. All the signs were there. They kept showing me the same thing. And I just kept pointing out the fact that they are not as bad as the Brooklyn Nets. They're not as bad as the Toronto Raptors.
Yes.
They're not as bad as the Chicago Bulls. But they've shown us since the All-Star break that they are, in fact, maybe worse because they have their star players out there on the floor. And even if you exclude Joel, it goes back to the point that you started off with that I know I brought up to you guys when we talked about this right when the season started. 4 to 5 offenses because you knew he was going to be out in Embiid. You got Paul George and Tyrese Maxey again as your second offense, knowing that those two guys are going to be out there. George is going to be out. You've seen what the Maxey and Embiid thing looks like. Both of them are going to be out. You know what Maxey can do by himself. Sometimes you're going to win some, sometimes you're going to lose some. And that fifth offense is probably going to look like somewhere of a combination of Maxey misses a game or two here when Embiid and Paul George are available. By the way, they started their 35th different starting lineup last night. 35th. And with it, Paul George has played 38 total games and the Sixers 57. And they still have not figured out a way for that to work. And that does, in fact, look bad on the head coach for it not to have an offense that is geared with those two to find a way to win basketball games, especially in the current state of the bottom of the Eastern Conference, where you should be better than those teams that we just said that. How about, I gave them too much credit. They are just as bad as them.
But so to that point, Devon, I think for a while I was still in that same mindset of, they should be better than this team. But when you sit and think about it, all that really is you and I and anybody else who's trying to stay in that mindset, looking at names on a paper and on a piece of paper and saying, well, they have this guy and they have this guy. And so that by default, they should be better than this team. And part of the beauty of sports is that's not how it works, right? That part of the reason that I watch sports and I care about sports and it's something that I pursued as a career is you show up to the arena and all the chatter, all the discussion, all the things that lead into it, all the resumes, all that gets wiped away. You have 48 minutes to go out there and show what is your resume tonight. What are you willing to give and do tonight? What are you capable of in this game against this opponent with these teammates at this time? And over the course of 50 plus games now, or I guess we're almost at 60 at this point.
57.
These guys have shown they don't deserve the respect of anybody, right? And I think it's shown most clearly where you have these teams that are bad offensive teams. The Sixers are a get-right team, right? Nobody has even a little bit of fear or trepidation walking into a gym and playing against these guys. They know they can get hot against them. They know they can put a 39 or 40-point quarter on the board. They know they're going to play crappy zone. They know, quite frankly, at this point, that if you punch them in the mouth hard enough, they will quit. They do not have a heart as a group. And so, again, some of that is not on the coach, right? Some of it is, and Tyrese Maxey talked about it last night, you have to just have it from within you, right? And remember, I love the game of basketball. I've been playing this game all my life. When I put my shoes on every night, I want to go out there and compete. Well, quite frankly, Tyrese, who I've given a lot of credit and respect to for trying to battle through all this, he's been just as culpable as the rest of these guys. Paul George going up and talking to reporters last night is saying it's unacceptable and we haven't competed and we can't do this and we can't do that. You're part of the problem, right? I said it all year. A lot of these guys talk and act as if this season is simply happening to them and not that they are playing a part, and in some cases a major part, in why this team isn't good enough. And so it's just a disaster on 100 levels. Derek and I feel like we do this bit, the 1 or 2 days that we're on the show in the studio during these long homestands. We always come in, right? And we're like, okay, where are they at now? They're 24th in offense, or they're 23rd. Right now, they're 23rd in offense. They're 24th in defense. They are, as an offensive rebounding team, 24th. They are, as a defensive rebounding team, 28th, right? They're bad at everything. They aren't good at a single thing, but at least they also don't try hard. At least they also don't communicate. At least they also get killed in transition. At least they're now turning the ball over way more than they were before because now the head coach has decided, hey, Quentin Grimes, you're going to be a point guard. Quentin Grimes, Lonnie Walker, two guys who are not point guards. You're going to run the team instead of Jared Butler for 12 minutes or whatever. It's a colossal failure So the idea that anybody could be, you know, disconnected from this blame at this point is just a fantasy to me.
Yeah. No, those Grimes Walker backcourts need to be banished to the Shadow Realm. You can't.
It's
Can't.
and with Drummond, it's and
Yeah.
Oubre. It's just
man.
like it's there. We harped on this all off season. They didn't have enough basketball IQ. They didn't have enough playmaking, and it's got. You could argue it's gotten worse. They haven't. They didn't go out and get like, oh man, they got like even Jared Butler, right? He's more of a I'll get my own offense type of guy. And he'll pass the ball. He's not a black hole or anything.
But it's more like passes when he's forced to rotation,
Yes.
not like manipulating.
If they didn't go and get anybody who's like, I'm going to get us into our stuff and make sure this thing runs. And frankly, I've almost felt more sympathy for Nurse trying to play Kyle Lowry because Kyle Lowry can't move, right? He's got cement shoes on at this point. I do think his brain is functional. I do think he's a smart person and a player and wants to get them into their stuff. I still think it was a tragedy that he was playing as many minutes as he was, but that's how desperate I am for like any type of competent high IQ basketball.
Yeah. And it really is like moving Joel Embiid is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Moving Paul George, really, really tough. So if you can't change the players, what can you change? And the coach is just the easiest thing to change.
Yep.
And it's especially true not only if he hasn't found the right, lineup combinations or right offense to run or anything like that, right defensive schemes, which is certainly not that 2-3 zone against Boston Celtics. Even like ignoring all of that, if the players aren't, the buttons you are trying to push with your players are not working, you have to get somebody else who's going to try to push different buttons. And unfortunately, I can't believe we're at this point already, right? Because Nick Nurse, he had a reputation of being tough on his players in Toronto, but like that was over a 4, 5, 6 year period. This is going at a speed quicker than even Doug Collins, and Doug Collins was famous for wearing on.
This
his
is
players.
like Scott Skiles territory.
But when you
bad.
get to this point, it's just very, very tough to reverse that trend. And you've got to try something. Like this is mostly your not mostly your personnel, because so many, but like this is your core. Maybe something miraculous happens in the summer. There's a good chance this is your core. You've got to get more out of it.
But so I follow up with this, and it's a shame that we're talking about this, but I just gave everybody what the schedule looks like going forward. At least let's just say the next 5 games. New York at home tomorrow. In New York tomorrow. Golden State at home Saturday. National TV games for both, by the way.
8:30 p.m. on that Saturday game is crazy.
Monday, Portland playing much better here. Minnesota the next night in Minnesota. And then you have the Boston Celtics on that Thursday night. So I say that to say that they're on an 8-game losing streak currently. So when you talk about somebody winds up being the fall guy for it and they take the blame, at what point, if they don't win one of these next 5 games, are we talking about him lasting the remainder of the season with 25 games? Or is it getting so bad that it's going to be somewhere in the next week and a half that it happens? Because I don't see one in there. Maybe Portland, but then that's still like 13
Portland's playing much better basketball.
Right, but I'm just saying that's
because they actually want to play basketball.
That's like
is a
12
pretty
of
important
13.
part.
That's 12 of 13
Here's
losses.
the thing. If you come in with a 13-game losing streak, you are clearly pivoting towards we need that draft pick. Like there's no denying it at that point. And not that like a new coach would come in and fix anything, because of core fundamental problems of the roster are what they are. But like there might be a dead cat bounce kind of thing.
Sure.
And you don't want to risk that.
No, if you continue this losing streak, you just want to hard commit to losing as many in a row as you can.
Look, I'm asking because it's pro sports. It happens.
Now, what I would say, Devon, the only reason I would not say 100% that way is like what's happening with Tyrese Maxey during that time.
That's the valid comment.
Right?
Yep.
Because Tyrese Maxey is the guy who's had to absorb the brunt of this on the court every night. And like I said, I have not been happy with how he has played on multiple fronts recently. But if anyone deserves some grace for, feeling like, God, it's just, Groundhog Day every night at the arena, it's him. I would pay real close attention to how he's feeling, whether he's playing still if you were to make an end of season change just to be like, this is so toxic. It's really just because Tyrese reaches some kind of breaking point. He's like, I'm not being shut down, but this is nonsense. Like I just can't go out there every night, get my head kicked in and play with guys who clearly have like given up on the season. So that's the only thing I would say. Like, I think at this point you're riding this out to the end of the regular season regardless, but Tyrese is the variable that I would keep a close eye on him. And I can't imagine that they don't have some idea of like what he feels during all of this.
So Paul George's issue is a tendon. What's Tyrese Maxey's finger injury?
He's got a sprained finger, I believe they designated it.
All right, it's a sprain. Okay.
But it's on the shooting hand, whereas Paul's is on the off.
Right. Yep. So just curious of if he has to miss time. If it's so bad and you just miss time.
That's the thing. If you lose the next 5, like shut
him
down.
I agree.
Down. I agree.
You could tell me you shut him down today, and I'd be like, yeah. Go right ahead. Because if anybody has nothing left to prove this season, it's him, right? I've seen what I needed to see from him for the most part, and I don't think I will learn anything from. Let's say, I mean, we're still waiting on the Joel thing's the big variable, right? And I believe he's probably not going to play again this year. But now you have like Gershon Yabusele has 2 different eye injuries. Quentin Grimes got pulled with tendonitis in his knee. Like everything is just falling apart. You're going to be down tomorrow night. Realistically, Joel, Yabu, Grimes will be a variable. Lowry and Gordon probably still out. Although you know how you feel about those. That's 5 of them. Right. So then you're talking about like David Roddy's probably gonna have to play real minutes.
He's starting.
Oh my God.
You kidding me?
Can't even.
He's starting.
Oh, I just can't even imagine. By the way, but like
that shot that he took that hit Bona in the face. It's like this is
the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, Drummond is gonna start tomorrow against the Knicks. So good times. Good times with that one. By the way,
at least they don't have a big man who can shoot from the perimeter.
Well, yeah. How about that? After coming off a bad loss to the Celtics, we'll see how that goes tomorrow. Drummond, great push shot there for that 6-foot air ball that led to a 3 that forced a timeout by Nick Nurse. And so there's that. All right, quick break. We come back. We got some audio that we want to play for you and video from Derek and Kyle last night in the arena. Paul George, speaking of, we've talked a lot about Maxey. Let's get to the Paul George piece and especially what he had to say in regards to their season and how that kind of goes into the conversation of the head coach as well as the PHLY Sixers podcast here on a Tuesday. I'm going to say it again. They were down by 50 last night to the Bulls. 50 to the Bulls. Presented by Bet365.
Also presented by our good friends at Shady Rays. Guys, it's not too early to start thinking about the summer. It feels beautiful out here in Philadelphia today. It was in the high 50s when I came in.
Wonderful.
I'm wearing a sweater right now, and I was just like, boy, I made a mistake. I should have just put on a T-shirt or maybe a hoodie and some shorts. I know, Derek, that's a preferred outfit around here. Anyway, prepare for the summer. Prepare your eyes for being out in the sun and the warmth. Our friends at Shady Rays helping you get in that summer frame of mind with their premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product. I know because we all wear them, right? We've got set pairs by Shady Rays. I have mine in my car that I need them all the time, but I also wear them when I'm out working on my house, when I go to the beach. They are great, crystal clear optics and durable frames. If you drop them, if you're worried about that, they hold up just fine. And with so many colors available, you'll find a pair that's perfect for you. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacement program. And if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days because there is no risk when you shop with our friends at Shady Rays. PHLY viewers and listeners, go to shadyrays.com and save 35% off of polarized sunglasses with the code PHLY. Over 300,000 people have rated Shady Rays 5 stars, so use code PHLY today at shadyrays.com.
And before we got to the break, Kyle was talking about the list of injuries that the 76ers had that may force David Roddy to start against the Knicks on on Wednesday. Well, I need to tell them that, hey, this is where you go. The medical staff is fantastic with the Sixers, but if you need a little more help because there's so many people, I got to incorporate my folks at Rothman Orthopedics. At Rothman Orthopedics, they practice in specialized care that has been their passion and their mission for over 50 years. Each Rothman doc is laser focused on their specialty, from hip, knee, spine, you name it. Every Sixer player has one of them, and they can just go right to Rothman Orthopedics once again, so you can get back to crossover in the defense, maybe drain a jump shot or two to win a game, and you can root for your teams as they do the same thing. Like no other fans do in the country. Rothman Orthopedics, they specialize in you. They specialize in me. My personal story, of course, torn ACL, torn Achilles. They repaired both of them. That's why I'm able to run around in this office and drain long jump shots here on the Pop-A-Shot every single day that we are here. Patients will find the full spectrum of orthopedic care at Rothman Orthopedics, from diagnosis to discharge. They provide their patients with every service and procedure necessary, such as x-rays, orthotics and bracings, MRIs, physical therapy, and much more. Rothman Orthopedics specialize in orthopedics and you. Visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. Welcome back to the PHLY Sixers podcast presented by Bet365. Paul George speaking last night after the game. Both the guys referenced some of his comments there after the game. Derek put up a video last night. Great video. Got a lot of attention from it. If you did not hear what Paul George had to say post-game last night after they lost to the Bulls by 32, and oh, by the way, trailed by 50, let's hear from Paul George last night.
You guys came out of the break saying, hey, we still got a chance to make a play-in push, to have the first three out of the break go like this. I guess just how shocking, surprising, disappointing, whatever adjective you want to put on it.
I mean, it's all of it. You know, we, regardless of who's playing, who's not playing, to have admirations, or for this group to believe that we can be not even, to get to the playoffs, but make a push towards it. I mean, we've shown no sign of a team that will compete, and we just don't have the habits of a champion or a playoff contending team would have. So to be honest, right now it's a little far-fetched. All we can do is work hard and try to just keep going for one another, but we've shown no signs of forget championship, but a playoff contender, team here.
That video, of course, courtesy of our very own Derek Bodner. And
we've shown no signs of the team that will compete, and we don't have the habits of a playoff contender.
He's not saying that at game.
But aside from that, that
again,
seems great.
Going back to Kyle's point, like he says that like he's a non-playable character.
We're all
he's
trying to
not
find the guy who did this.
And he's saying that
wearing the hot dog suit, just crashed the wiener through the storefront.
And to be clear, what he's saying is 100% true.
Yes.
It's just like use I.
And he's saying that at game 57, not game 77, as they're walking into the postseason. There's still 20 plus games left, 25 games left. And he's saying that. So when we talk about being defeated and all that,
that's literally just said
really
the other
bad,
night that
man.
Drugs would be his advice to Joel Embiid to deal with.
This is really bad.
And again, I think for the first 2 months or so of the season, I think Paul was competing. I think defensively he was trying hard. He was one of the more consistent, more impactful defenders that they had. Over the last month and a half, I think his defense has taken a huge dip. Part of that might be the pinky and not wanting to get hit. But when the going got tough, this team has not responded in any kind of way to turn the season around, and he is absolutely a part of that.
I think one of my least favorite plays from that Bulls game, and there were plenty of plays to choose from, we could go down the list, was Paul gets to the basket, scores a layup. He wanted a foul call. He's doing a little bit of flexing after the basket, and then is, moaning to the officials, like, why didn't I get that call, blah, blah, blah. In the process, he gets back cut and the Bulls score another 2 points. Yeah. And that's where this team has been, right? When they're not scoring, they're also not defending. When things aren't going well on one end, it's not going well on the other. Even when they have some success, Paul George and Maxey were pretty good in that first half, at least offensively, right? Like, looked decent. They're getting to the basket. They're doing what you need to do against a small team with no rim protection. And then at the other end of the floor, you're giving it all back. You're not paying attention. You're not communicating. You're not rotating. You're not showing any desire to turn this around. And again, watching Paul George just like hang out in the corner while David Roddy is getting roasted by Josh Giddey. It's like, brother, I know that off-ball defense is more of your thing, right? I know that you're not prime Scottie Pippen, where it's like, oh, put this guy on this guy and he's putting the clamps on him. But to be such a passenger is just insane to me. I will say, I do think over the last, let's call it week or so, is when I think the realization has really set in for Paul. I was talking to a media member, a national media member, who I was like, I think he finally realized this is not LA and this is not Indiana. And like, there will be no let up. Like, people are pissed and you don't just get to fade into obscurity because people don't care about the team, right? Like, he's understanding you guys suck and you're here for the long term, and people aren't going to let you forget about that until you put actionable results on the floor and compete hard and win games. And you can hear the weariness in that guy's voice. Just like, it feels like he's played 3 seasons in 1 season listening to him talk.
He's on the presidential aging curve here in Philly.
Going to see a lot more gray hairs on Paul, unfortunately.
38 games he's played, man. 38 games. And again, that thing, while we made jokes about it when we showed those photos from the All-Star break, that wasn't a joke, man. This is the wrong place to be doing something like that when your team is whatever many games they were at that point, under 500. You scored 2 points in that game going into the All-Star break. This is not the place for that. And you're right, man.
Now, in his defense, though, did he post that or was it only his girlfriend?
No.
He reposted
His wife
it.
posted it.
Okay.
He reposted.
Yeah, it probably wasn't a smart move.
That's why it wasn't
Because I have
good.
no problem with him going on a vacation.
No,
Just like
we
do it
said
low
that.
key. Yeah.
We said everybody needed a break,
Yeah.
including us. We all needed a break. He needed a break. You just don't show it. Let her show it. You just don't repost it. That takes effort to show it and repost it. And he did that. And that's why that stuff does not fly here. And his tone, all of that, he's standing there. He's answering the question. I guess he's being a leader. Show it on the floor too, man. Show it on the floor.
That's what I mean. The talk is cheap. The talk is cheap.
Getting your heads beat in at home. At home. And you had a
At least Jimmy Butler might just punch somebody and get mad.
Exactly. And get tossed. Right. You had 3 home games. Exclude the Boston one. Just show some effort. You weren't beating them, but show some effort.
No,
the last 2. Yeah. Show some effort, man. That's all.
His defense it looks like someone who's checked out. And again, I think he was a real good defender for the first couple of months. He has not been.
By the way, we got a heads up from, and I knew this was coming, but a heads up from a member of our diehard Discord, which all of you should be in, but take your time, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Take your time and hurry.
They just were notified that their season ticket renewal is going to be next week or within the next week or so. Boy, that is quite a time for season ticket renewals.
And if you're a season ticket renewal, the default action is for it to renew, is to keep your status unchanged. So if you want to not renew, you have to actually take action to make sure that doesn't happen.
Good times. Good times. Sign up to become a diehard member, allphly.com.
Much better deal than the season tickets for this team this year.
Did they offer any of those drugs that Paul George was talking about?
Percocet
P with the Perrier.
I actually like Perky P better. Okay. That sounds funnier. He was Paloma P before that, hanging out on the beach. Oh my God. Punta Cana P. I actually know where he went, but I'm not gonna. I won't dox his vacation spot.
It was PPP in there, that kind of. So hey man, let's go to super chat. Let's go to super chat from Sixers jail. Somebody's Sixers jail. I'm willing to take the blame for this season. I waited 4 years to pick a game to travel from Iowa to Philly.
I was trying to meet up with Sixers jail the other night, by the way, and it just fell through. Left the game early, unfortunately.
4 games, settled for the most recent Boston game. Ooh, that was a tough one. Disaster. Cool city, though. Sixers jail, we appreciate it. Sorry you couldn't catch up with Kyle.
Yeah, told me that they had a blast in Philly, like did all the historical stuff. I was a little, I don't want to say rolled my eyes with the cheesesteak choice. I was like, I would have steered you in another direction.
If you're coming from outside the city, that's fine.
That's you're coming from Iowa. You can do the touristy stuff. That's
Look,
okay.
if you're coming from Iowa, any cheesesteak he had was probably the best.
The only thing though is like you ask everybody else, even if you don't catch up with you. Ask others.
I think doing a touristy thing once. Next time you come back, do the local thing.
We'll go to Angelo's.
Let us know. We'll hook you up.
Ask others. All right. Sal says, what percentage of the blame do you give the organization, coach, players?
So organization, we're talking front office?
I'd imagine.
Yeah, because I think it's probably worth splitting ownership and front office in the organization part. But it is a little bit harder because I do think that they reflect ownership in a lot of ways.
And most of, like, if you're bringing ownership in, you have to go back years.
Yeah.
In terms of like blame for why their record is what it is, Joel's the biggest reason. Again, I don't like using the word blame, especially when talking about injuries. Joel's the biggest reason. Maury is, and front office, I think, is the one you would blame the most. I do think Nick is third on the blame list. I do.
Yeah, it's the easiest one to change, but it's probably the least amount of blame. And that's how I view the NBA in general, right?
Yeah.
It's like part of the reason I never call for coaches to get fired is I don't think coaches are that important, or I don't think they're as important as a lot of people on the outside do.
Yes. They're an easy punching bag. They're an easy lever to pull. It's a worthwhile lever to pull because, like I said, if you're not getting through to your star players, or if your system's not, meshing with the star players, it's worth, even if it's a low chance that you're going to material improve your position, it's a worthwhile one because the downsides are low and it's an easy one to change. But to Kyle's point, I don't like calling for coaches to get fired, even when it becomes long in the tooth, like maybe Brett or Doc were before, in part because, they are humans, but also in part because I just don't think the odds of like a material difference, I think they're pretty low.
Shizzo Flex with the next super chat. If Nurse is in fact fired, Maury should be right behind him. His philosophy stinks. If we get a top 3 pick, Maxey or McCain can be packaged in a move up to number 1. And I'm assuming that's for Cooper Flag. Shizzo, thank you for the super chat.
I do wonder how we haven't even been able to like talk to these people about draft stuff, because I think in their brains for so much of this season, the Sixers haven't even considered the idea, or they certainly have recently, but earlier in the year, they're not even thinking about like, VJ Edgecombe and Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey and
Kyle,
certainly Cooper
the practices
Flag.
coming out of the All-Star break, they were saying how dangerous they would be as a playing team.
Just squint and there's a contender, baby.
Cavs don't want to see us.
They don't want to see them.
So
yeah.
I would say I would be highly, highly skeptical that they would trade up if they got a top 3 pick. I think that they would stand pat and just say, we'll take one of these guys that's there.
I would have interest in trading up. I think Cooper is good enough of a prospect.
I do think that, but I also think that it's in the situation they're in, you just don't want to give up extra good players or picks.
See, but I think in the situation you're in, you desperately need someone who can become a top 10 to 15 player to make you relevant going forward. Because none of us really have confidence Joe's going to reach that level again.
No.
He might, but like the confidence level's low. Maxey, I think, is probably tops out below that. Like, you need someone who's going to impact the game at that level. This is your best chance in quite a while.
What would you have to give up to move up as currently constructed?
You're talking about the Clippers pick.
If they're at 3 to move up to
Clippers pick, you're talking McCain, some combination of that kind of stuff. And I love all of those players and or assets, but like when you're talking about a real difference maker, and first pick is usually pretty safe, at least as safe as a draft pick can be. I would entertain it.
I would say and I don't think you're necessarily off base here. If you believe they need to get that guy, and we're just saying Maxey can't get there, I would tear the whole thing down. I'd trade everybody.
See, but I do think Cooper fits in well with both Maxey and McCain.
if you don't believe they have one of those guys here, I don't have any interest in, like, if you trade up for Flag and it's like Flag and Maxey, realistically, what's the timeline on that team?
Couple years. End of the rookie scale.
Yeah, like, I don't know, man. And at that point, Maxey's at the end of his deal. He's looking at like, oh, maybe I'll go elsewhere. And like, that doesn't really do anything for me.
I also don't think, like, let's say you go down 2 years and Cooper hasn't developed as quickly as you hoped and Maxey wants out. I don't think he necessarily loses a lot of value. He's still what, like 25, 26?
Mm-hmm.
I guess it would also depend on, I think there's a material difference between 2 and 3. Like if you told
I
me,
agree with that.
If you had 2, I would just take Harper and I wouldn't even think about it. 3, it becomes a little more interesting because I'm going to watch some of the more recent stuff. I have not loved Ace Bailey, and we've talked about that on the show. And the other guys are like, they're interesting. Like, I like Edgecombe. I need to watch more Trey Johnson, but like, they're not like, oh, I definitely believe that guy can be like an anchor of the franchise.
No, I agree 100% with that. And I will also say, I'm sure there's somebody listening to this right now going like, they traded from 3 to 1 once before and it didn't work out. Look, I know we're all very hurt by what happened with Markelle and maybe a little bit risk averse because of that. That's a very unique edge case scenario.
Furious with the last super chat here for us, to the point of what you guys were just talking about. Are we in for a 3-year rebuild, or is there hope for next year?
Let's see what happens with the pick.
And what happens with Joel. Yeah. Like, again, so circling back to the first super chat we got, I can't remember whose it was about.
Sixers jail?
No, about who to blame or like what the percentage of those Sal. I do think like it's very boring analysis. Joel's health is like 1, 2, and 3 in terms of importance. And so you also can't remove like the front office and how much you blame them is connected to Joel and endorsing a future built around him with the extension and saying, we're taking this. Maybe it's not as big of a risk as other people think it is, but it is a risk. And having it go like this, where now we're at the point where we're talking about experimental surgeries where they're going to like shave his bones or give him a new meniscus, which by the way, my understanding,
I don't think it's an option.
I don't think it's an option for Joel. Like the Lonzo Ball thing, I don't think that's even on the table as far as I know. Now, maybe I don't have the most current medical information. He's obviously seeing lots of specialists and undergoing lots of tests. I don't think the Lonzo thing is a possibility. So I think what we're actually talking about is, I don't want to mispronounce this. I think it's osteotomy is the procedure where they cut your bones and they change how your bones are aligned. They like literally have to break your bones. Yeah. And there are all kinds of potential complications for that.
Pressure off your...
Yes. And there are different osteotomies. Like you can get it in the hip, you can get it in the knee. It's like every joint. So I think it's for specific osteocartilage arthritis. I believe it's a high tibia osteotomy, although I think there are some hip ones that might have similar impact. Do you understand how messed up the situation is that I have to know all this detailed medical information about bone shaving surgeries?
I really, like every time there's an injury, I'm like, we've learned everything we can possibly learn about the medical field. Nope. And when you question your pronunciation of osteotomy, don't question it. Just say it confidently because all you have to do is know more than most people in the chat. And if you're confident, they'll go with it. Because I can't call you out on it. Sounds right to me.
Make sure you go sign up, become a member of the Die Hard program there, allphly.com. You can see our schedule also there on the screen. Bree has us. We are, of course, today and tomorrow we have pre and post game beginning at 6:30 for the Sixers and the Knicks. Thursday, follow up that game. We have a 3 p.m. show off Friday and the Golden State Warriors in town Saturday night, 8:30.
Jimmy Buckets, baby.
8 o'clock pregame for us.
Man, if he walks in here and drops like an efficient 25 and like 10 assists, people are going to be they're going to be pissed anyway. But
8 free throw attempts, 1 turnover, classic Jimmy Butler line.
They get a Steph Curry show.
Listen, they've been looking pretty good as a combo lately.
Like 6 in a row or something like that.
They're going to get out of the play-in. That's going to be a just genuine playoff team after it looked like their season was on the brink.
They've looked really good. And make sure you take advantage of, as we talked about, the all PHLY, of course, .com. Signing up for the Die Hard program. $48 right now for your first year. So jump on in there. Discord, T-shirt, all that great stuff. Check out the store as well for the gold standard, the store.allcitynetwork.com to go get some gear and celebrate still the Eagles championship that still feels good. And now we have to deal with this on the basketball side. All right. So there's that. Can I ask you one question, though, before we get to the roll call?
Of course.
Boo. Oh, that's not the question.
Yabusele and Grimes are out tomorrow. Who are your other two starters, assuming that Justin Edwards
All right,
also
wait.
is
Let's
also...
go. Let's go through the full list of who's out, because I think a lot of people, myself included, probably forgotten some.
Joel Embiid,
Yep.
Justin Edwards, Yabusele, Quentin Grimes, Kyle Lowry,
Eric Gordon.
We're assuming that Edwards is out tomorrow?
I'm just assuming,
Okay.
just because he has been.
I think he's questionable, right?
Yeah,
he's
I think
questionable.
there's a chance he plays.
Right. But assuming he's out, those are what, six that we just laid out there? Who are the other two starters? Kelly Oubre starting. Paul
So,
George
Maxi PG,
and Kelly Oubre. Who are the other two?
I guess Grimes will. My guess is
No,
Grimes will
Grimes-
play
Okay.
because they said tendonitis, and that feels like one where it was like we're getting our heads kicked in. We don't need to play this guy anymore. I think my guess is he'll play and he'll start. But
My
you
hope
never
is
know.
Grimes and Edwards both play.
Yes,
because that's
but
where
for
I
the
would like to go.
exercise, assuming they don't.
Wow. Okay, so what are your options here?
I mean, Drummond will start.
Drummond will start at the 5 or Bona, but he's going Drummond
He'll
first.
start Drummond.
Ricky's an option.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Butler and David Roddy. Those are your only three options.
Or Lonnie Walker.
Or right, Lonnie.
Yeah.
Because I think Jared Butler would be tough defensively to make work.
Yeah.
So maybe you go Lonnie.
Drummond and Lonnie.
Drummond and Lonnie.
God, man.
ESPN game, folks.
By the way, Lonnie has been bad.
Yeah, he's been bad.
He
Yeah.
has, and he gets some time, right? He's
Yeah.
being thrown into a horrible situation,
Right.
but boy,
Yeah.
he has not helped.
Yeah. So assuming that, all right, so we go the other way where Grimes and Edwards are available. Drummond is going to start. You're just going to start one of those other two along with
Let's get weird. Drummond Bona.
Drummond Bona, man. Drummond
get
Bona. Get
That's
weird.
actually, I would honestly be intrigued by seeing that. So
I am
I'm
very
rooting for that.
anti-double big lineup, but we're trying to lose games. Not that you're going to need a lot of help with this one, but screw it.
We said it. They can lose without tanking,
Yeah.
man. They're that bad. Tough season, folks. But as we said last night, we're here for you no matter what.
Lonnie
we will
Walker
be here.
sitting here saying, I left
I left
Lithuania for
Lithuania
this.
for this. Marston says Lonnie's still jet lagged. Probably. Oh man, this is gonna be a time. And one more thing, so we can get out of here. Boy, if it ends up where they are in that lottery mix of protecting specifically the protected pick, we're gonna have a fun time from the end of April,
Oh, I can't wait.
the middle of April to May 13th when the draft lottery is that night.
I need this pick more than I need water.
Oh man. It's gonna be a fun one. All right, let's
Watch,
do it.
they'll draft somebody and they're like,
The worst.
they'll fall victim to like a voodoo curse or something. It's
worst.
always something new. Like it rang home last night. Yabusele, when they ruled him out for the game with, what was it?
Corneal abrasion and swelling in the
And
other
swelling.
eye.
But that wasn't even what they said. It was like injury to both
Both eyes.
eyes. Like, it
Yeah.
was some
Did you
ridiculous.
see how play? Like he got like his hand completely
No.
covered his
and
face.
I'm like, not making light of it.
No,
Hopefully Yabu's eyes are okay.
Yes.
Here's what you tweeted last night. He has a corneal abrasion in one eye and is dealing with swelling surrounding his other eye. The hope is that he avoided
yeah.
retinal damage.
No, but he's talking about in game when they rule him out for the rest of it.
It was a different designation at first because it was too early. And by the way, I don't know that he did avoid retinal damage. That was
No,
just like
yeah,
they were hoping so.
Okay,
So that even
contact to both eyes.
contact to both eyes.
Yes, there's that. Contact to both eyes.
What are we doing, man? So yes, I hope the Sixers keep their draft pick and we can talk about maybe a young core moving forward. But my God.
It has been a time. All right, let's wrap this thing up here and get ready to the world famous roll call.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today and every day. Thank you to PHLY, to INS, to No Laughing Matter.
Whoa, this is no laughing matter.
Buddy,
What up, no laughing
buddy, we
matter?
gotta laugh around here, or we are not getting through the rest of this season.
Fitty.
Thank you to
Fitty.
Vincent hanging out.
Fitty.
Thank you
Last
to Igavini.
What
to
up, Agavini?
Malk C10.
Malk.
To MBD, BDBF.
Welcome back.
To Martian Lynch, who's still listening to that Sad Boy Drake album. What up, Martian? Hello to B. Costello. Hello to Yams Colangelo.
Yams.
Hello to Puppas.
What up, pups?
Checking in overseas. Hello to Bootzilla. Hello
Boots.
to Jose Sanchez. Hello to Money Mar, Public Enemy. Not even number one. He's down the list at this point. Nick Nurse, Daryl Morey, Joel Embiid.
We're all in unison here.
You might not be in the top five
all
at this
in
point,
unison
brother,
here.
but good to see
What
you.
up, Mar?
As always, Eden the Remix, Randy Rubart, Jess hanging out.
With the purple heart.
With the purple heart.
Mary Overfield.
What up,
Hello,
Mary?
Mary. Hello to my girl,
Wasn't that like
Winona.
2 weeks when
Winona.
she had a blue heart?
Yeah,
It was
you were upset.
Start
Quite
of the
a time.
downward trend.
PHLY
It's her
guy.
fault.
Here, as always, Sean Sharp hanging out with
What up,
us.
Sean?
Who were our super chatters today?
We saw Sal.
Bree. We had Sal.
Sixers
jail.
jail.
Send him to jail.
Shizzo Flex. And Furious
Are you furious right
in
now?
the building.
More dead.
Dan
I'm dead
Taylor,
inside.
thank you for coming in. Steve-O215, thank you for coming in.
Oh,
K-Red, the #1 hockey fan of the PHLY Sixers show.
yeah.
Boy, you picked a bad time to learn about basketball, my friend. But we're always thankful to have you. And each and every one of you who are here in the chat, as always, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't before. Please hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And hit that thumbs up to say thank you to Bree. And thank you to all your wonderful colleagues in the chat hanging out and giving you some
50.
community
50.
while we get through this terrible season together. We'll all be back tomorrow night for Sixers Knicks, an away game.
6:30.
So catch us for the pregame show.
I'll have my Knicks jersey on, y'all.
Oh, no.
I think Derek and Kyle will allow it this
Public
time.
enemy number one over here.
I don't know about all that. We did, by the way, there was somebody who came in and said they were a Knicks fan and it was a must win. And I honestly can't tell if it's a real Knicks fan who thinks it's a must win or a Sixers fan pretending to be a Knicks fan.
Is this one?
Justin, we need this game as a Knicks fan. Justin, I'm
I
not
think
sure
you're
if
okay. I think you're okay.
You're 36 and 20.
The
You're
Sixers
fine.
fans agree with you, buddy. A must win for the Knicks tomorrow night. We'll see you then.
See
Goodbye.
y'all. See
Until
ya.
then.
6:30.
We all silly like the mayor.